Very thankful that they've been able to come up and sing the last several weeks. It's been a lot of fun to kind of hear them out, and every once in a while when you can tell they really know that part of the song is when they really get into it, and I can start hearing them a lot clearer from over on this side. It's a lot of fun to have them do that. I'm going to be in two different places this morning. I'm going to be in the book of Exodus, chapter 20. I'm going to be in the book of Matthew, so I need you to kind of hold those two spots somehow, because we're going to kind of flip back and forth a little bit, especially at first. Before I get there, before we get into the message, there was one other thing that I had forgotten about that I wanted to make sure to announce on its own up here. VBS, I know it sounds like a ways away. Summer sounds like way, way far away, especially with the kind of weather we're having outside right now. But it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of preparation, a lot of planning, and that has already begun. And so Jill and Jamie Moyer, who have who put the thing together last year, we hosted it here and shared some locations and everything, have started up the process of VBS for 2014, and have asked a couple of things of each of the churches in the community of Ford and Buckland, Kingsdown, kind of the area that we connect with. A couple of things that they've asked for is, one, join them in prayer. That's something that's certainly important. Asking God for His help in and through this process, and that not just that for them and the strength that it can get it done and meld well together on that, but also that we will have a response. It is a tough thing. We see it a lot down here at the Awanas program. We have a lot of kids very interested. One of the hardest parts we have is they don't have a family background that supports that interest a lot of the time, and so to get them here all that week to find ways of having those kids show up. We had a fantastic turnout last year. Would love to do the same thing, take part in the prayer on that. And then number two would be financial. We had asked about this last year. They're asking for it again this year. There are costs. The churches help some, Minister Alliance helps some, but this is an opportunity if you want to help. So the way that's going to work is that they are going to have, if you see on there, on 16th and 23rd, which will be the next 2 Sundays, an opportunity to give. This is not our offering. This would be something in and above that. So if you can do anything, a little bit of something will help, because they need to get supplies and planning and do all the stuff that goes with that. If you have any questions, we actually have one of the two of them here, so that works out pretty well. I know her. She's sitting right there. So ask and be able to kind of help you along with any information as far as that goes. Last week was, in my opinion, pretty cool. I really appreciate what happened, what we did. Super Bowl was fun in and of itself. Certainly the game was whatever, but the time we spent together was great. It seemed like coming out last week the message was let's go, let's do, let's be, let's kind of ramp this thing up, which is going to feel a little weird because now I'm going to do a couple of weeks here talking in a new series, as you can see, called Sabbath. And I'm sure for many of you, the moment I say Sabbath, and maybe you've never heard a preacher talk about it before, or you have a vague understanding of what we're talking about when I say Sabbath, you might think, well, isn't that all about pumping the brakes? Taking a break. And so we're talking about in 1 week, let's go, and now next week we're going to talk about let's stop, and we'll get to why we're going to do that in a moment. But before we get into our word, let's read. I'm going to read from the book of Matthew chapter 5. I'm going to pray, and then we'll get our morning going. I'm going to start in verse 17. This is the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 17. Sermon on the Mount. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. I tell you the truth, until the heavens and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Anyone who breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. Let's pray. Father, as we get into your word this morning, certainly I pray help us to clear out anything that might be in the way. anything on our minds that might be competing for space right now and time in our lives, may it be shut down, may it be suppressed, may it be pushed out, that we may be here fully to focus on what you want us to hear this morning. Father, may you help me, certainly, to get out of the way. May your message shine this morning. May the truth pierce our hearts, and may we have a good understanding going forward in this Sabbath series. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. If I was to ask you this morning, how many, and keep Matthew open because I don't want anybody cheating on this. If I was to ask you this morning, how many of the commandments do you know off the top of your head? I'm kind of giving you an easy one here. And open that up. How many of the commandments could we come up with? So let's see. How many can we come up with right here alone, just right now? Start shouting them out. Okay, so the first commandment, which is to love God with everything you got. Okay. Yep, that's one of them as well. I think that's like number 5, 6, somewhere in there. Covet. There was a whole list of things in there, but essentially, yeah, the idea is don't covet something else that belongs to somebody else's, Number 10, okay? Don't steal. Yeah, I think that's 6. Don't what? Don't kill. Also a very good one. Most of us enjoy that one. Appreciate none of you disobeying that one. Would ruin our friendship probably pretty quick. I think that's number 7 or 8, somewhere in there. Remember the Sabbath. Good one. Helps a lot for this message. Glad you got that. Number 5, I believe. Any others? What's that? Yeah, so there's one about the idols, not having other things to worship before God. I think that's number 3. We got almost all of them. Yes. Yep, no adultery. Another good one. It's like 7 or 8. Again, I kind of get those last few mixed up. What's that? So not using the Lord's name in vain. Another great one. I think that's number 2. I think there's one other one. Unless we got them all. Should have probably been counting. I think that might be all of them. We said the honor your mother and father one, right? No stealing. Did we get that one? Right. So, I think we got them all. I think we did pretty good. Collectively, I think we got all 10. And here's the interesting thing when we talk about the commandments. I think for most of us, we have a different view of what they mean in our lives. So, if I was to say, not to take the Lord's name in vain, for some of us, that means very strictly, we cannot use the Lord's name unless we're talking about it in the worship sense, praise or something like that. Though I know for some of us, that seems to go right out the window the moment we smack that hammer right on our thumb trying to do that, certain project at home. We talk about do not steal. I would say for most of us, that seems pretty clear cut. Don't take something that doesn't belong to you. But I'm sure there's probably been moments in our lives when we've been presented with certain situations in which it's not so much that we don't want to steal, but we start thinking about the gray areas, right? Or the degrees. I probably shouldn't go steal a car, but, I see that $20 bill on the ground. I know it's not mine, but it doesn't seem like it belongs to anybody else either, so I might walk away with it. But when it comes to the commandments, it seems like we all have kind of a different understanding at times as to what those mean and what they do in our life. Should we even follow the commandments today? What are they to a Christian in the 21st century? And what's interesting here is that Jesus kind of alludes a little bit here. He flat out kind of tells us as he moves into this part of the Sermon on the Mount of what the commandments are to him, therefore what they should be to us. He says in verse 17 of chapter 5, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets." What is the law or the prophets? That is essentially what we're talking about here. The law is the great big scheme of everything that Israel lived its life by. It's our Declaration of Independence. It's our Articles of Confederation. It's the rules in which we live our lives. It started with the 10 Commandments that, Moses, the whole bringing them down from the mountain and all that whole thing, that turned into hundreds and hundreds of laws. From those 10 spawned all of the different ways in which they lived, the ways they worshiped, sacrificed, had relationships with each other. All that they did came from these laws. And Jesus is saying, I've not come to abolish them, but, he says, I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. What Jesus is saying to us when it comes to the 10 Commandments is that everything we do, and honestly, I'm one of those that I've grown up and I've had my moments in which the 10 Commandments have been a big deal in my life, and then other moments when they haven't. I remember having an argument with my parents, or maybe even just my mom, early on in my Christian faith, and as a high schooler, and it was that moment in which we're going back and forth, and I don't know if I was disrespectful. I don't think I was trying to do that, but just basically didn't want to do or listen. And she threw at me the whole commandment of honoring your parents in that moment. And it's like, oh man, she got me at that moment. It's like, what are you supposed to do? Because what does that even mean? Honor our mother and our father. And we have these moments. Again, it's great if we listen to the one not killing people. I think that's a fantastic one. I think most of us would agree. I appreciate if you don't follow, if you continue to follow that one when it comes to you and I. And we talk about the neighbor issue and coveting what does not belong to me, and we talk about honoring God and not using his name in vain. But when Jesus comes into this world, he isn't just saying, look, whatever it was, just keep on doing that. He doesn't say, hey, you've got a copy, I've got a copy, we've got them over at some, Supreme Court over in Oklahoma somewhere or in Texas, and they're out front. Keep doing that. Jesus very clearly says, look, I haven't come to get rid of them, but it doesn't mean that I want you to keep them the same way. I've come to fulfill them. So what we see in his life, what we have to see, are examples in which the 10 Commandments are being changed, being fulfilled through what he does. And we see this very clearly. This is where I wanted you to kind of keep your fingers on both. So if you've got Exodus 20 open and Matthew, you'll see these two different things going on. Exodus 20, this is the story in which Moses gets the 10 Commandments. This is the one you've seen played out hundreds and hundreds of times. This is where God is telling him about all the different commandments. And as you read through these, they're laid out 1 through 10, but as we see in Matthew, all of a sudden, he being Jesus, starts talking about some of these very same issues. Mine, I got to flip a page, maybe yours doesn't, but you continue in chapter 5 and you look at verse 21, and he says something very clearly here. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not murder. Jesus is quoting the 10 Commandments. He's saying, you've heard it said, you know the 10 Commandments. You've heard it preached before. Do not murder. Where is that? Well, if you go back to Exodus chapter 20 and you start flipping through, all of a sudden you go, oh, verse 13, you shall not murder. He's flat out saying, you know the commandment. You've heard it before. You've heard it said, verse 21 in Matthew, long ago, do not murder. And anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But, there's that but again. But I tell you, anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. All of a sudden, he takes something that's rather extreme, and I think most of us could go, yeah, we're good with that one. Have I killed anybody today? No, okay, I'm good. All right, I'm good. Came close a few times, driving to Dodge, wanted to get out of the car. That would have been close, but I didn't kill anybody, so I'm good. Commandment checked off the list, but he says, no. You've heard it said, don't kill anybody, but how are you doing with your relationship with your brothers and sisters? You call yourselves my followers. You call yourselves Christians. Now we do. They wouldn't have then. Are you mad at them? What does your relationship with that person look? Is it good enough in your life if you're just not killing that person? Look, Toby and I might get into an argument, but is the town going to be okay with me just not killing the guy? I'm going to guess you could probably take me pretty well. But that all aside, is that a good thing in our relationship that at least we can say we haven't killed each other? Or is it a problem if we get into an argument and we don't talk. We don't wave hi at each other, and we don't integrate with each other. You see, Jesus says, you know what it is, but here's the fulfillment part. He goes on from there. You've heard it said, verse 27, just the next one down. You've heard it said, do not commit adultery. Well, that sounds familiar. We just talked about it, right? You flip back over to Exodus 20. Look at the next verse. Verse 14. You shall not commit adultery. Great. I did not sleep with somebody else this week. Check it off. Perfect. Done. Commandment in the bag. Verse 27 in Matthew, you have heard it said, do not commit adultery, but, again, that but, I tell you. Anyone who looks at a woman or a man, ladies, lustfully, has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So it's great you didn't cheat on your spouse. It's fantastic you didn't step outside of your marriage and sleep with someone else. I'm glad you didn't commit adultery, but does that other woman or other man keep a space in your heart where your spouse is supposed to be? Do you think about them? Do you wish you were with them? Do you long for a relationship with someone you have not married? I'm glad you haven't gone all the way physically, but have you emotionally, mentally? And once again, we see Jesus taking a commandment that many of us can just boil down and say, look, that's what it says, that's what it is, and he fulfills it. He says it's not just good enough to just stay away from the act itself in the exterior, the physical part of our lives. What is going on the inside? What is happening in your heart and in your mind? I'm glad you're not taking life from somebody and committing murder, but are you giving your life over to somebody else? I'm glad you're not sleeping around, but do you even care and love your spouse as much as others you are dreaming or thinking about? And you see very quickly, Jesus' goal with the Ten Commandments wasn't just to say, are we doing it or not? Yes or no, pass or fail. He's saying, I have come not to get rid of them, but to open our minds to something way more. These were meant for so much more than what we made them out to be. And here's my argument. This is what my argument is going to be the entire time. That it's not just about what we're doing with adultery and stealing and coveting and all those things we want to stay away from, certainly. But what we're going to do over the next couple of weeks is we're going to talk about the ways in which Jesus fulfills the Sabbath. We're going to talk about all the ways in which Jesus comes along this law, because it is a law just like all the rest. Even though all the rest are in and of themselves something we do daily, this is something we recognize as a weekly event. How does Jesus fulfill the Sabbath? Here's the thing about Sabbath, if you look at Exodus 20. There's something very powerful going on in this moment. All of these, as I was reading through them, I recognized they're very clear, they're very clean cut. You get to verse 12, and it's pretty much one verse at a time. But when you look at verse 8 with me here in Exodus 20, feel what it is that God is trying to get across to Moses. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son nor your daughter, your manservant, your maidservant, your animals, your alien within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath and made it holy. Now, I don't know how many of you have manservants and maidservants. No judging there. I don't know how many of you are dealing with livestock on any kind of regular basis. I know sometimes our kids may feel that way. But in and of itself, you get a sense as you read that commandment that there is something that is meant to be very special, something very incredible about this day of Sabbath. He says it's meant to be holy, set apart, We are meant to stop and to enjoy this Sabbath day. And so then the question becomes, on a day like that, should my Sabbath look and feel different than every other day in my week? If I was to just do a quick, and I'm not going to ask anybody to raise hands, but if I was to do a quick survey, my guess is we would get 100% return if I was to say, is Sunday Sabbath? If I was to say to you, do you consider your Sunday, this day, what we're doing right now, your Sabbath day, my guess is we'd get probably a pretty close to 100% return on yes. You consider today Sabbath, if we're going to set apart a day. Which then makes us ask the next question. When you think about all you do on a Sunday, what it is meant to be, not just in this time, but the whole day, would you use words like holy? Would what you do when you leave this place be considered set apart? Would it look different than every other day in the week? Again, from start to finish. Interesting enough that when it comes to the Jewish calendar, they considered essentially Friday night into Saturday night their Sabbath time. So once Friday night hit around dinner time, that's when Sabbath began, and it did not end till Saturday night. Not saying that it has to be different. We'll get to that more later. But essentially the question is this: is your Sabbath different? Does it look different? Does it feel different? Because if it doesn't, then how could we call it Sabbath? How could we call it holy? How could we call it set apart? When it comes to Sabbath, how is it Jesus is fulfilling this in our lives? Now, here's the one thing I don't want to do. I don't want to make us feel bad. I don't want to make this thing clubbed over our heads. I don't want you to start looking at Sabbath like some legalistic thing that we have to follow. So let's look at one more story. This is where we're going to wrap up our morning with. We're going to look at one more story. We've been in the book of Matthew. I need to turn one more over. Look at the book of Mark. Mark chapter 2. Actually, the story is in Matthew as well, but I like Mark chapter 2 story better. If you know anything about the Gospels, they will repeat the same story. Sometimes they have a little bit of differences just because of what the author was looking for, maybe versus what the eyewitnesses were able to recall. But essentially what we have in Mark 2, starting at verse 23, is a story that we could find in Matthew. I think we could find it in Luke as well. But I want to read from Mark chapter 2. One Sabbath, again, Mark chapter 2, verse 23, one Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and his disciples walked along, and they began to pick some heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" Work, again, completely off guard. You're supposed to stop. God worked for 6 days. On the seventh day, he rested. Not you, nor your wife, not your manservant, your maidservant, not your animals, not the alien within your gates. No one is supposed to work on the Sabbath. And here these guys are, pulling grain, picking the fields, doing work. Why are your guys, these are the Pharisees to Jesus, doing what is unlawful? Verse 25, he answered, he meaning Jesus, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need? In the days of Abiathar, the high priest, he entered the house of God and ate the consecrated bread, which is unlawful only for priests to eat, and he also gave some to his companions. Then he said to him, 'The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath.'" Jesus is asking, what is the Sabbath to you? If I'm going to come and fulfill this thing, just like all the rest, what is it going to mean for you, and what is it going to mean for me? Is it going to be just another part of your week, another day that you do maybe a little bit different? But honestly, yes, we come to church. You don't do that on any other day of the week, pretty much. But is it going to be an opportunity for you to, get a few extra chores in that you did through the day, or you didn't get through the week? Is it an opportunity to run to Dodge to get some grocery shopping done that you weren't able to do? Or is it going to stand out as something completely and specifically different than everything else in the week. And what the Pharisees are doing in this moment is they're saying exactly what I might hit you over the head with. Why are you breaking Sabbath law and doing anything? You all should go home. You all should rest. You all should stop working and do nothing. That's what it's usually argued as. Why are we doing anything on Sabbath? So let's also make people feel bad that have to work on Sundays because that's what their schedule looks like. And let's do, the uber Christian thing and say how we're holier than thou because maybe we stop and you don't. And Jesus' answers to all of that, his fulfillment of the law, just like all the other things we've talked about, is this. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. Jesus answers the question, what is the Sabbath for you? The Sabbath is not meant to condemn. I know sometimes we might come to church and we may walk away feeling like, we've been hit over the head and it's been just kind of nailed into us with information, but the Sabbath is not meant to condemn you. It's not meant to make you feel bad. It's not meant to make you look at what you are missing in your life. The Pharisees say, look how you work, and Jesus says, you're missing the point. Why are you focused on what you are doing when you're missing what God is doing? Simply put, for your fill-in this morning, the Sabbath is not a time to check out, to turn off, but a time to tune in to what God is doing. I'll read it again. The Sabbath is not a time to turn off, but a time to tune in to what God is doing. Jesus says the Sabbath is not for man, or is for man. Man is not for the Sabbath. It is not a day in which we are supposed to sit there and be locked into the law. You understand that these are the laws that the Jewish people live by every day of their life. The Sabbath was not meant to lock us down, to put us in chains, that one day a week we recognize that there's nothing we can do. We have to just sit at home in our chairs and sit there with a grumpy look on our face to make sure we aren't doing a single bit of work. What's happening in this moment is Jesus saying, look, are your laws going to step in the way of what is necessary in our lives? These men are hungry. They need sustenance. You're going to say that the law is greater than these people. And Jesus is saying, I fulfill it by making the Sabbath for man. When was the last time you stopped on a Sabbath day and truly enjoyed what God was doing in your life? When was the last time you looked at Sunday as an opportunity to set apart from everything else in the week, to stop everything that's going on? Not because you have to, but because you get to. Because you have an opportunity to reflect on what God is doing in and through you and what He could do in and through you in days to come. The Sabbath is not meant to be a day to just shut down, turn our brains off, to veg out. Granted, those are great things, and sometimes we need to do them. But rather than turning off to the world around us, can we look at Sabbath as an opportunity to tune into what God is doing? It's so much more than just taking the day off or sitting around or taking a nap. It's not meant to condemn us, but to fulfill us, to enjoy. The Sabbath is a gift that was made for you. Yes, there is stopping involved. Yes, there's ceasing involved, but not to the point that we become a bump on the log, but to think about what God is doing. Here's a reality. In our world, in our culture, we are always going and going and going. And what God is saying is, I have built into this creation a moment, a time, for you to stop, to take a breath, and to think about what it is that we are doing together. That's the fulfillment. Not that we legalistically stop, just like with murder or stealing or any of these other things, and say, look, okay, I've done it today. I've made it to church. I've checked off my Sabbath time. I stopped from everything else I'm going to do, and then I'm going to go right back into the rest of my world and my life. He's saying, take a breath. Take a moment to stop and to reflect and to think. Maybe worship can be more than just 1 hour a week. In the weeks to come, what I want to do and what I want to make an argument for is that in order for us to do some of the things I think we want to do, and beyond just as a church, but I think as individuals, if you truly want to come to a place where you are worshiping God, not just 1 hour a week, but for the whole existence of your life, my argument is going to be it may take an opportunity to stop before you can fully go. You may actually have to rest before you can get up and go and do what you want to do. My argument will be in the next couple of weeks that if we truly want to be all that God is hoping for us to be, if we want to go out and we want to evangelize, and we want to impact, and we want to love people, and we want to do all these things, that the first step may not be actually going and doing. The first step may actually be stopping and thinking and praying and worshiping. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next couple of weeks to come. And the truth is, I'm terrible at this. And so as we go through this together, this is going to be a challenge for me as well. And the whole goal is that when we get done with this, I want us to be a church of families, of people that take Sabbath, value it, but see it as more than just a rule, but see it as a gift. Something God has given us to fulfill who we are truly meant to be. That might be more than you've ever heard about Sabbath in your life, and I'm excited about what we can do in the next couple of weeks. Why don't you pray with me? Father, thank you that we can gather. Thank you that we can worship you. Thank you that you've given us a break in the weather, that we've been able to clear enough snow and we can come and be here together. Thank you that we can worship you through our song and through word. But Father, thank you that we have a break. That this is a time we can set apart, we can value, and that we can catch our breath from a week that has spent us, or maybe a week to come that we fear. Father, I pray in the upcoming weeks, may you help us to understand that Sabbath is more than just an opportunity to just shut down. It's an opportunity to think about all the amazing ways you are in our lives. Reflect on the goodness of your nature and the gifts and your mercy. May we look at Sabbath as less of a rule and a law. May we start to see it as more of a gift and an opportunity. Not to turn out or tune out from what you're doing, but rather tune in to all the incredible ways you are working in our lives. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.